Well, for the third consecutive week, a Big Ten opponent. It has been, for us, very physical 3 weeks with Michigan, Purdue, now and Michigan State, and playing the #1 defense in the country. Mark D'Antonio's teams, obviously, have a hallmark of their teams are physical and certainly well prepared in all phases of the game. And they've been great football games. Another one here at Notre Dame this weekend. Number of returning players on defense. Guys that we've seen over the years. Max Bullard inside has just been a stalwart for them defensively. Danikos Allen, their will linebacker, a guy that can put pressure on all offenses, and certainly where they're able to do so many good things is in the back end of their defense. Experience at the corner position where they can play so much man-to-man coverage, but outstanding defensive schemes. Make it very difficult to run the football again. You've got to find ways to manufacture runs. You've got to be able to protect your quarterback. Again, you've got to play tough, physical football for 4 quarters. You've got to take care of the football. And all the little things matter in matchups like this. And, again, from our perspective, we'll have to prepare to play a team now that has settled on a quarterback on offense. It looks, to us that Connor Cook now is the guy after hearing Coach D'Antonio's comments this week. And what he does for them, obviously, is, gives them the ability to run the quarterback. And that has not been something that has been part of their offense in the past. Now they have the ability to, run some schemes in particular situations down and distance that, force you to consider how you're defending them. They're going to be a team up front that has a veteran offensive line, a lot of experience, and we know the kind of offense that Coach wants to run, and he wants to be physical and run the football first, and they've got talented receivers and big physical tight ends. So it's the Michigan State teams that we've come to know and respect, and again, it's going to be one of those typical Big Ten games where, last man standing through 4 quarters comes out victorious. With that, I'll open it up to any questions. No questions today.
Brian, over here to your right, when you look at your guys' running back situation, has it come to the point, maybe for you and for teams almost anywhere, where having the guy is not necessarily the way it is, period, that you're going to go through 2, 3, 4 guys per game, per year?
Yeah, and I think if you look across the country, last year, obviously two backs at Alabama, 2 backs at Georgia. Some of the SEC schools have shown that they're playing multiple backs. I think across the country, that singular back, that one guy, has not been able to fit all the things that you want to do offensively. I think the position has now required a guy that, is multidimensional, and it's better to find that maybe in 2 or 3 different backs. For us, we think we've got 5. We haven't been able to get 5 on the field. I think we've gotten 3 on the field. We're still, I think, in a process of trying to evaluate our freshmen as well, and we haven't been able to get into the ideal situation to do that, primarily because we've had to deal with so many pressure fronts and so many times where we're calling our backs back in to protect. It hasn't been the best proving ground for some freshman running backs. Hopefully, as time moves on, we'll be able to do that.
I know we probably talked about it ad nauseum, but what's important to you in terms of managing guys, both in keeping them ready, keeping them believing they have roles, and where you can just drop a guy in every now and then and he's that guy that week maybe?
Yeah. Well, I think that's a very good question. Those are the things that we have to manage from day to day. Whether it be Cam McDaniel, who didn't get much playing time the week before, to, obviously carrying a great load in the game. I think the believability is in the fact that that's exactly what happens within our structure of offense and defense. You got to be ready because you're going to get called upon. We trust that you can do the job. Sometimes that's easier said than done, but that's what's required of us, that the guys trust us and believe us, that we're just not saying that. When we believe the circumstances are right for you to play, you'll be in the game, and we trust that you'll get the job done.
Brian, you appear to be putting quite a bit more pressure, or attempting to put more pressure on the quarterback with linebackers as opposed to last year. When you do that, what does that do to your secondary? What are the responsibilities of your corners in particular when you're putting more pressure up front and leaving them more exposed on the back end?
Well, I would say that, if you track where we are, we're probably getting back to, finding more about the personnel that we have on the field and what we can and can't do, more than percentage-wise. That, the personnel groupings we have on the field will dictate where we go defensively. And as I said in the first couple of weeks, we're still trying to find what those groupings are to maximize their potential. So I wouldn't necessarily draw any conclusions as to whether we're going to bring more pressure or not. I think it's still, we're trying to evolve. The simple answer is, obviously, if you bring more pressure, you're giving up some zones. So you either have to play some 3 under 3 deep, which vacates some zones and you better get there, or you have to play simply some more man coverage. And within that man coverage is a lot more technique that goes in it, because it's not simply you line up wide. It's bunch formations, it's picks, it's fighting through all of those complexities of playing man-to-man coverage. So the easy answer is probably what you already know, is that when you bring pressure, you're either giving up some zones and zone pressure, or you've got to play man-to-man. I guess what I was saying is that I still think we're not where we want to be defensively in terms of what that structure is going to be yet.
I'm sure every coach would like their team to be, or their defense to be, a better tackling defense. And there's been a lot of running backs or receivers that have spun out of potential tackles by your defense. Are you finding, just in general, not just you, but I mean across the board, that there's less contact in practice? I mean, that's the nature of the game today. Is that impacting the way you guys or most defenses are tackling?
No, we really have not changed. That's one of our absolute core principles, that we start our practices with a tackling circuit. We have, every year that I've been a head coach, we'll continue to do that. I think performance and your ability to stay on the field has a lot to do with your ability to tackle. So we will not budge on that element. We're not gonna tack it up to, well, we can't tackle as much anymore because of NCAA rules. I think that's a bunch of baloney. We got to tackle better.
I'm not asking whether you're changing your technique. I'm just saying, is it more difficult to be a good tackling team if you don't have as much contact in practice?
No, and I think the question's fair, and I think I'm answering it. No, I believe you still can demand good tackling from your players, and if you don't tackle well, you can't be a great defense.
Sheldon Day, his status for this week?
He has an ankle sprain, as many of you know. He's made really good progress. He's going to stay in a walking boot today, and we'll take it off tomorrow. Pretty encouraging that he'll be able to practice tomorrow, and then we'll see how he goes from day to day.
Thanks.
Yep.
Brian, over here. What kind of dimension does the offense get when Tavares Daniels is playing the way he did Saturday?
Well, certainly it gives us, another big play receiver. I think TJ has shown his ability to be that guy as well. Now you have Daniels that can certainly get down the field and make big plays. It definitely stretches the field for us. Certainly our ability now to, vertically push the ball enhances what we want to do now with both of those guys. Troy Nicholas, our tight end, and then our running back by committee and inside slot receivers give us a lot of balance. But, obviously having two guys that have proven themselves already to make big plays is key for our offense.
Switching to a guy on the other side of the ball, how's Bennett Jackson change or not change now that he has a C on his chest this year?
I don't know. I think sometimes when you're put into that position, it has a tendency, and I've tried to let him grow into the position. It has a tendency to put a little bit more pressure on you. You don't want to let anybody down. You want to live up to the incredible history and tradition of being a captain here at Notre Dame. And, I think he was pretty hard on himself. It was nice to see him have some success on Saturday, and I hope that continues to build. But, as a person, who he is, the kind of kid he is, and how he's respected by his teammates hasn't changed. I think maybe there was a little bit of, pressure that he put on himself that maybe we could kind of help him with moving forward. And I think it's a little success this weekend helped him.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Brian, up here, you just talk about your pass protections in general, 3 sacks, I think, 110-plus attempts so far this year. How do you sort of evaluate that aspect of your offense right now?
It's been really good. I think we've been able to maintain a consistency, obviously, at that end of things with the development of our tight end and Troy Nicholas's ability. As you know, last year he struggled at times. I think the Stanford game was one where, he got beat a couple of times. I think that has helped us a lot. Ronnie coming in as a first-time starter and Nick, you don't know what you're going to get, but we had a glimpse towards how good they could be in preseason camp and the way they handled the Lewis Nixon and Stephon Tuitt. So we were hopeful, but you don't know until it happens. And then Tommy gets us into the right protections, 9 out of 10 times. Whereas last year, Everett was still learning, and sometimes he wasn't able to slide the right way and give us the best look possible. So I think it's a combination of having some veterans there, a guy stepping up in Troy Nicholas, and 2 freshmen have really blended into a group there, and then finally Tommy's ability to get us into some really good looks.
The last drive, where you run out 7.5 minutes, is there anything you can take from that would apply to the run game moving forward, or is that just such a specific instance of what you're running that what worked there might not work in the middle of the first quarter?
Well, it's a fair question, but it's hard to take that timing in the game and place it in the down and distance and what you're trying to do. You know what I mean? You're trying to, score points. I don't know that we were trying to score points. We were trying to take time off the clock, so there's a different mindset in terms of what you're doing. But the fairness in the question is, well, if you can beat the heck out of them on the line of scrimmage then, what's going on earlier, right? And so I think settling into the game, getting into some checks that our guys really now knew how they were lining up. I thought Purdue did a very good job in the first half of giving us multiple looks that we hadn't really seen, and it took us some time to really get our bearings. But we have to do a better job early. There's no question about that. But I think to say, well, you did it late, you should be able to do it, I think the circumstances are a little bit different there.
Does also kind of the physical accumulation of plays work in your benefit at the end too? I mean, the way your offensive line is conditioned?
I think it definitely helps, and then I think that there was only, at that time, formationally, we stayed in one static formation, so the looks that we were getting were really consistent. Whereas earlier in the game, we're in, I don't know, as many as 8 or 9 different formation looks, so you're getting a lot of different looks. So I think all those go to that.
Just a personnel question. You mentioned you're kind of finding guys, different roles. Austin Collinsworth, what have you seen from him, in coverage as a guy that you can send to bring pressure? what have you learned about him the last 3 weeks?
I think the word that I would use the most is trustworthy. Words like consistency. He's not going to wow you with a physical presence, but yet those two words are so important at that position that he's really settled us down in that sense. He's really smart, communicates well, and as you can see by the number of reps that he's picked up over the last, game and a half, you could probably know what my answer was going to be relative to Austin Collinsworth. It's been, trustworthy and consistency.
Thanks.
Coach, right here to your right. When Stanford came in here last year, you really put a lot on the offensive line and challenged them that you have to match their physicality. With a team like Michigan State, and not to take anything away from the first three opponents, is it a greater challenge this week, a similar one, where the physicality has to emerge?
Yeah, we know that, and we have a ton of respect for Michigan State. Our kids have played in the game, and a lot of them have played in it. They know the kind of game it is. So it's not like I have to stand in front of them and get them ready for this fight. They know what kind of fight it's going to be. So this isn't, hey guys, please listen to me this week. They know what they're going to get from Michigan State. So, from that standpoint, it's really for us about preparing them for the multiple looks and the pressures and the things that they're going to do offensively that are a bit different from what we've seen in the past. I think we've got to do a really good job of preparing our players for their schemes and game plan. But they now know, especially a lot of our veterans, they know the kind of game it's going to be, the physical kind of presence that Michigan State brings week in and week out.
Kind of following up on the final 7 minutes there where it was different circumstances, how much did it also, the circumstances play, the two deep balls, one to Chris Brown, the 40-yarder, and then obviously the touchdown to Deveras. I mean, did that really enable you perhaps to have those circumstances be different defensively? Because early on it was more just the short passing game.
Mm-hmm. Well, relative to what they were doing, it didn't change. They were still outnumbering us in the box. We were just finding ways, to eke out 3 and 4 yards inside, and then they brought pressures. Tommy was able to get into some good checks, get the ball outside. It was a combination of an inside-outside running game. It wasn't in that particular instance because we got them off us. They were not playing their safeties very deep. Their corner was in the box. They were at that point had to gamble that we would throw the football. And so although it gave us points, it didn't impact that last 7.5 minutes.
How much do you think it helped? I mean, Cam last year against Miami, he had those 11 straight touches. And just to be able to get into a rhythm for a running back, how much does that facilitate a ground game when you get those 3, 4, 5 straight carries?
Oh, I think if you ask a running back, they would all say they love to get into the rhythm. And they see things. I mean, because when you're in there for 2 or 3 plays, just the nuances of how the block gets set up. The guard pulls. Do I stay on his inside hip, or am I going to be on his outside hip? Based upon how this particular guard blocks, all those nuances come into play when you are 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 yards or 8 carries into a drive. So there's no mistaking that helps. So he got better. He saw things, as he got more carries. But circumstances change from week to week, and we're not just going to use one back.
I wanted to ask, the first 2 games gave up a number of yards to quarterbacks breaking containment or going through the middle, and last week you were able to shut that down a little bit more. As a coach, defensive coordinator, everything, do you prefer playing just straight drop back type quarterbacks, or do you find it much more challenging to face the dual threat?
There's a lot more to the dual quarterback, obviously, his ability to make something happen, obviously on the run. is a lot more difficult, and it changes some of your calls considerably. You know, with his ability to run the football, you have to protect your defensive linemen too. You can't let them just be by themselves. So it definitely adds a dimension to the offense.
Brian, this side. We've only seen a little bit of Cam so far. What, in your mind, can he do better to get on the field more? Because from what we've seen in the limited games has been pretty good, but clearly you've talked about circumstances dictating who plays when. And what can he do to get on the field more?
He just needs to continue to do what he's doing. I think in terms of carries, I know we got a lot of carries on Saturday, but I think he's one carry away from, I don't have the numbers, isn't he? One carry away from having the most carries or tied for the most carries on the team. So I think George is third on the team in carries. So I think when it's all said and done is where we can probably get a better sense and feel for that answer. They're all contributing. I think we'll continue to see it week to week. Next week, maybe we talk about somebody else. We just think we've got a lot of guys that can contribute, and they're all going to have roles. I don't know that we're going to have one guy that we put up there and say, he's the guy. I think they're all going to contribute in some fashion.
What do you like about him in particular in terms of the way he runs?
Well, certainly, I think we all love the way he attacks, the line of scrimmage. He's a kid that plays with a great deal of passion, loves the game, love him off the field. He's a football player, and when I say he's a football player, he just loves the game. He loves everything about it. So you really enjoy watching him and pull for a kid like that.
A little bit ago, you were talking about the necessity to start quicker. Is that something does that come down to preparation, or is it execution? Is it play calling? I mean, where have you identified the needs to improve in that area?
I would say, that's a little bit of each one of those. I think we all have to take accountability for, not starting well. I think at Michigan we had a couple of third down situations early on that we didn't execute very well, and then we didn't punt the football again. Same thing in Purdue. We didn't handle some fronts and some movements up front. Didn't throw the ball effectively. Didn't get into some checks early on, and then settled down and got into it. Here's what I don't want is we're not going to use it as, well, that's just the way it is. That's not the way we're going to play. We need to play better out of the gates, and we need to play better early. We can't rely on having a great second half comeback. That's going to wear out here.
Brian, up the middle here. Not to turn this into the Cam McDaniel press conference, but you mentioned the fact that this is a physical game this Saturday. Does that play into his strengths?
If it can in certain instances, certainly. We do so many other things, as you know. Pass receiving is important for the running back, right? Amir Carlisle did a tremendous job in pass protection for us on Saturday. Here's a guy that we are all talking about. What's the first thing that came to your mind when we talked about Amir Carlisle? His speed, right? He was tremendous in pass protection. Stuck his nose in there, was as physical as Cam McDaniel in pass protection. I just think that, all five of the guys, and I don't want to, let's not write off our two freshmen. I know they haven't played as much, but we're really high on those two guys. And I just think it's still evolving at that position. And I know I sound like a broken record on this. We like them all, and they all have talents, or they wouldn't be out there for us.
Defensively, Michigan State, you talked about their linebackers and their secondary, but Calhoun has emerged as a big play guy for them.
Yeah.
Is he the kind of player that somewhat you have to game plan around?
Well, you better know where he is. Obviously, he's had a couple of fumble recoveries. He's tall, he's long, extremely athletic. But, you've got, a guy like Marcus Rush who's been there forever, who's a tenacious, physical player. it's just a really good football team across the front. They lost some veterans up front, but it looks like they've, just reloaded up front with the same kind of guys.
In terms of your defense, you said you're still trying to find pieces, and you talked about Bennett and the pressure that he faced coming off the Michigan game. Is it tough for a guy like Bennett as the captain who is on defense to kind of get into his buddies and get into the players when he's coming off a bad game like Michigan? Is it easier this week now coming off some success after Purdue?
Well, I theoretically, I think it could be. I think it's a body of work. I think it's a respect that you earn over a period of time. I think I don't think there's anybody on our defense that, if Bennett said something to him, regardless of how he played, that they would look at him and say, "Oh, hey, well, hold on. Who are you to talk?" Or you wouldn't get to where you are today. So, I think, obviously it's more likely that somebody's going to speak up after a game like that. But I think where we are defensively is that all of our guys are really paying attention to their own business right now. I think that's where we are.
And to quote Eric Hansen, last one from me, Lewis Nix, how frustrated is
He's
he
so
with...
quotable, isn't he?
He is. You should change his name to Babatunde. But anyway, Lewis Nix, how frustrated is he with the double teams that he's facing game in and game out?
Well, look, he is at a position that is going to get double teamed. And Lewis knows that he's not, he's not a defensive end. He's in a position where he's getting double teamed, but he's played really good football, and he's done everything we've asked him to do, and he continues to battle and fight and play really good rush defense. Where we held a Big Ten opponent to one rushing touchdown. I think that's the best mark since 1965 here at Notre Dame. So he's doing a lot of good things.
Brian up here.
See how I threw that out there? And you guys didn't even blink at that 1965 thing. Did you guys have that? Did you have it? Okay, just so I want to make sure you guys are paying attention and not falling asleep.
Going back to the slow starts and getting into the checks and seeing things a little bit clearly, is part of that a function of having a first-year center, recognizing those defensive looks that are different?
Oh, no. In terms of the function of the checks not being correct early on, is that what you're saying?
Or just the slow starts in general, and going back to the running game, taking some time to figure out the looks that Purdue was throwing at you and adjusting to those?
No, not really. No. Nick doesn't have, the full authority to, it's all five of those guys really working together. I guess you could make the case if you had a veteran in there that, some of those mistakes could get cleaned up, but I would not put it on the center. We're not center driven in that sense. We have to recognize linebackers. We get a little too sometimes technical instead of just, recognizing they're just a bunch of birds in there. We sometimes, well, that's the mic. Well, it's not really the mic, and I don't want to get into too much detail, but I think what we learned this week is that maybe sometimes we get a little bit too technical in there, and we're learning there with a couple of new guys in there, but I would not put it on the center.
DeVaris Daniel, I think a year ago when he was first getting started, you guys thought he had a very high ceiling of who he could become. How far along that path is he, and how much more space does he have to reach that?
Well, he's 2/4 of the way. He needs to be 4/4 of the way. He can obviously impact a football game. We want him to impact it 4 quarters, and he's capable of doing that. It just requires, that mental approach, which is coming, and you can see it. I mean, you can see it in practice. You can see it in the way he's maturing off the field. He's doing all the little things. To be that great player, you got to have it all going for you and everything that you do. And he's growing up and he's getting better. But there's definitely more there for him to grow into.
A year ago, I think you guys had a lot of success containing mobile quarterbacks. What was the recipe, and what does this defense need to do to get that same type of success?
Well, I thought last week we did a great job against very athletic Rob Henry. Threw the ball away a number of times. We kept him in the pocket. I think we need to continue on that vein this week. You know, Cook is somebody that's elusive. He's a big kid that can run the football. Look, when it gets down to playing quarterbacks that can make plays, it also comes down to the ability to stay in coverage too, because if they're elusive, they're gonna make some of these big guys miss. We've got to do a great job with secondary contain, which we have and we will, and we've got to do a good job of staying on body and coverage.
One guy specifically I wanted to ask about, it looked like, I don't know if you've been doing this all season, but the past couple weeks I've noticed Ishaq Williams has been playing kind of a middle linebacker in the nickel. Does his athleticism help you in that, trying to keep a guy locked in and that type of thing?
Yeah, we mess around with that a little bit. That's one of our schemes, one of our packages that, you know, he can be in a position for secondary contain to go to your point relative to, you know, athletic quarterbacks. So it's definitely within our package.
Brian, you mentioned the freshman quarterbacks, Bryant Folston. For those of us, we haven't seen a lot of reps of them in a game. What did they bring to the table? What do you like about those two guys?
I like the way Greg runs, just really physical, hard runner. You know, he's just downhill. There's not a lot of wasted movement. You know, he gets it and goes. When he first got here, there was a lot of dancing, and now it's point A to point B. I like the way he hits things. Very good acceleration. Folston's very smooth. You know, he just looks like everything he does is very smooth, gets out of his breaks very, very well, puts his foot in the ground and can accelerate, catches the ball extremely well. Both those guys really catch my attention. Even in pregame, and I was, you know, against Purdue, we were watching our young kids warm up, and they catch your eye.
When you jump up to play the #1 defense in the country, do you want your players' mindset to change? Does it change your mindset as a game planner? Does it change the offensive play caller's mindset?
Well, certainly when you're talking about the #1 defense, there's a reason for it. It's personnel driven, and certainly their scheme. So you have to be aware of both. And so this week, we make sure that our kids are prepared for the schemes that they're going to see against Michigan State and understand their personnel. Now, after that, it's up to us to execute what we do. We're not going to go into the game and hope. We have to execute. So after we've handled this week's preparation on what they're doing from a scheme-wise and then their personnel and how we need to play, it's going to ultimately, week in and week out, it's going to come down to how we execute. You know, a question was asked earlier, it's going to be how we tackle. It's going to be how we protect. Daniels is going to have to make big plays. Our backs are going to have to run. Our line's going to have to identify the schemes. So, yeah, you better recognize Michigan State's personnel and their schemes, but you're going to have to execute to beat this team.
Defensively, Kavari Russell, how would you evaluate him through 3 games this year, and how do you help a guy kind of push along his confidence, I guess, or regain his confidence?
I don't think he's lost his confidence. I thought he graded out better this past weekend. Matter of fact, I know he did. He graded out better, much better this week than he did against Michigan. He's a young player that is still growing. A kid that played running back and wide receiver in high school that we moved over last year to corner, and is still developing at that position. But I thought he took a step up from week 2 to week 3. He's a very conscientious kid and wants to do well. And if you have those two things, if you have that and the athletic ability, we're going to continue to work with you.
How is Malik in good standing with the doctors and with yourself?
He's in good standing with the doctors. Very good standing.
And can you elaborate on the second part? And I wanted to ask, since he has missed a lot of time, is there any thought to bouncing him down to the scout team to give them a good look? Or is that the fact that he's maybe still #3, keep you from wanting to do that?
No, it's a fair question. We're considering it. He learned his lesson relative to what is information that needs to stay within the program, and he learned his lesson. He touched the stove, and we've managed that, gotten through it. But it's a good question, and I think, to be honest with you, we're probably going to look at doing both. Good?
No.
Oh, excuse me.
I talked to Coach Holtz the other day, and he talked about the one major regret he had as a coach at Notre Dame was not enjoying the journey.
Mm-hmm.
How difficult it is day to day. You're worried about Michigan State, then you're worried about the next week. How difficult is it to enjoy the journey?
Well, I think once, and I've kind of passed through that in a sense, is that once you understand why you're doing this job at Notre Dame, it's easier to enjoy it. And I'm doing it because I get a chance to coach incredible kids. Kids that we got home at 3 a.m., and you asked the question, so I'm going to answer it. We got home at 3 a.m. for the second consecutive week. These kids are tired. And they had to check in at noon, and then they had study table from 2 to 4. Then they had dinner, and then they had study groups from 7 to 9. And that's their lifestyle. And that's how they do it here at Notre Dame, and that's great. And so once you really get your hands around that it's truly college football at Notre Dame, and that's the way they handle things, then you can enjoy it. Because if you get caught up in the noise of everything else, there's no way you can enjoy it. So I enjoy being with my guys. I'm going to defend them. I'm going to back them up. I'm also going to point out to them when they don't make the decisions that they need to make, the good decisions. But I think that's how you can enjoy it, Al, more than anything else, is that you got to understand at Notre Dame what our mission is. We want to win a BCS championship, no question about it. But all those other things are really important to us as well.
Brian, got off to at home here the first season and a half. It wasn't you were barely about 500. 9 straight wins now. What has led to that mentality that you've been able to create in this team?
Well, I think there's a lot of things. There's a lot of levels. We've learned how to play the game. We play the game. For me, I've always wanted our teams to play hard for 4 quarters and, just fight really hard, and we'll figure out a way to win the games. And we've managed to do that by and large in terms of the way we play. I'd like to play better football at times, mistake-free. I think we've learned how to play the game. We prepare very well. I think that's the second thing. And I think we've been able to manage game week at Notre Dame very well. That's a big part of that as well. There's a lot that goes into game week at Notre Dame. So if I could highlight those 3 things, maybe in reverse order, right? Handling all that goes into game week at Notre Dame. The preparation, I think our guys really understand how to prepare, and then playing the game, the right way, hard and physical for 4 quarters.
I know one of the managing and getting ready for the game, you changed the service time to Friday. What other changes have you made that you think helped out in that area?
I just think the way we've spaced out the day, Friday and Saturday has really helped our kids a lot. It's given them the opportunity to regroup a little bit, focus in on the game and not all the other things that are going on around the campus. And it's Friday and Saturday. It's the luncheon and the pep rally and those things. We've really been able to get our guys. Friday has been more of a focus day, and then it's allowed us now to really embrace the pep rally. Go over there and have some fun. We even used a swear word, okay, though it's in the Bible, but we used a swear word, so we're going to be cleaner next pep rally. But we've been able to have fun. Do you know what I mean? And we want to have fun at the Pep Rally because it's a great event. So I think we're really seeing it in the right way, is to embrace it and have fun with it. And I think that's helped us a lot.
And there was a change at the stadium as far as piped-in music playing, and it began the game before the streak began. Do you notice a different atmosphere at all? Do you notice that when you're on the field? Any difference in the crowd reaction or noise or anything?
Oh, yeah. Those have all been little things that have been, worked through the team, and they enjoy it. They like it. They like that extra energy of the music, and then we added a little bit more when we had the bagpipes, and then they played music before we went. All those little things, the kids see that. They like that. And those are all little pieces where they feel like they're part of that. And part of the tradition is great, and then having a little bit of say in that, they really take some ownership in it.
And last one for me is, you've talked a couple times about the identity of this team still evolving. Quarter of the way through the season, is that unusual to be this far in and still searching for identity? And what do you think it's going to take for this team to, start forming that identity?
Well, I think the identity that we want versus what we have is consistency. And we have, some of it is our guys have their own identity. I want my identity to be imposed on them. And that is, we need to just be more of a consistent group in terms of how we play the game. They've been really good in practice. They've figured out a couple of things that we were short on, and we've gotten those taken care of. And now we've got to play with a little bit more consistency for 4 quarters. That'll be the next step up for this football team.
Good. Are we good? All right. Thanks, everybody.
All right.